The wind cut across the open ground like a knife, sharp enough to steal the breath from Clara Rollins' lungs. Her black morning dress snapped around her legs as she lifted the shovel one last time and pushed frozen earth onto the shallow grave. The ground fought her, hard and unyielding, just as it had fought her husband to the end. Now it had won. James Rollins lay beneath the thin layer of dirt, soon to be buried deeper by snow. Clara stood alone, under the wide Wyoming sky, the land stretching out cold and empty in every direction. The townspeople of Sage Hollow had already gone. They had watched from a distance, offered stiff nods, then returned to warm homes and full tables. Their looks had carried pity, but also judgment. James had challenged the wrong man, and Clara was paying the price. She felt hollow. Grief sat on her chest like a stone, heavy and crushing. She and James had come west with hope. They had worked the land together, shared dreams beside a small fire, believed effort would be enough. He died in gunfire, meant to scare him, meant to break him, meant to take his land. Now she was 24, alone and marked by his grave. The cabin felt worse than the open cold. Inside, silence pressed in from every wall. James' hat still hung by the door. His cup sat on the table, untouched. The smell of his tobacco lingered in the air, cruel in its familiarity. Clara sank onto the bed and pulled the quilt over herself, not for warmth, but to hide from the emptiness. The next morning brought the banker. Mr. Henderson spoke softly and avoided her eyes. The loan was in James' name. Without payment, the land would return to the bank. 1 week. 1 week to erase a life. When he left, the silence returned, heavier than before. Clara tried to sell what little they owned. Tools, furniture, even the rocking chair James had made by hand. Neighbors came to look, but not to buy. They whispered about bad luck, about curses. A dead man's tools, they said, were not worth the risk. Clara heard every word. She felt them wrap around her like chains. With no choices left, she walked into Sage Hollow and asked for work. At the hotel, at the store, at every door she could find. Each answer was the same: polite refusals, tight smiles. A widow with trouble behind her was not welcome. By the end of the week, she had only a few coins and a growing hunger. On the last evening, as the sun dropped low, Silas Croft stepped into her path. He was rich, powerful, and far too confident. His eyes lingered on her in a way that made her skin crawl. He spoke of protection, of food and shelter, of a place in his house. Clara heard the truth beneath his words. She refused him. His smile faded. His warning did not. "When you are starving," he told her, "you may think differently." That night, Clara packed what little remained: a blanket, some beans, a tin cup. Last, she took James' revolver from beneath the bed. He had taught her how to use it, just in case. She saddled her mare, Daisy, and rode toward the mountains. If the town would not have her, she would face the wild alone. The first day was quiet, cold, but manageable. By the second day, the sky darkened. Snow began to fall. Then the wind rose, howling through the trees, erasing the trail. The storm swallowed the world. Daisy stumbled. Clara's fingers went numb. The cold sank deep, pulling strength from her bones. She fell once, then again. The snow looked soft, inviting. Sleep called to her. She thought of James and forced herself up, step by step, until her legs finally gave out. As darkness closed in, she saw a shape through the storm. A cabin, or a trick of the light. When she woke, warmth surrounded her. Firelight flickered against rough log walls. A heavy fur lay over her body. The smell of smoke and meat filled the air. She was alive. A man sat by the fire. Broad shoulders, buckskin clothes, dark hair. When he turned, his eyes were pale blue and guarded. He brought her broth and told her to drink. His voice was low and rough. He said his name was Eli Carver. He said the storm would last days. She could stay until it passed. As the wind howled outside, Clara lay beneath the firs and watched the stranger by the fire. He had saved her life, but something in his silence told her this cabin held secrets, and once the door had closed behind her, there was no turning back. The storm did not ease. Day after day, snow buried the world outside the cabin, piling high against the walls until light barely slipped through the small window. The mountains vanished behind a white curtain, and the silence grew thick and heavy. Clara's body slowly warmed, but her nerves stayed tight. She was trapped in a stranger's home with nowhere else to go. Eli Carver lived like a ghost. He spoke little and moved with quiet purpose. Each morning he fed the fire and left food within her reach before vanishing into the storm to check traps. When he returned, snow clung to his coat and beard, his face hard and unreadable. He never asked questions. He never offered comfort. Yet he never failed to bring food or wood or water. Clara watched him closely. His hands were scarred, strong, used to hard work and harder things. Rifles lined the wall, clean and well cared for. Steel traps hung near the door. This was not the cabin of a simple hunter. It was the refuge of a man hiding from something. As her strength returned, Clara refused to remain helpless. She swept the floor. She cooked the meat he brought back. She melted snow and cleaned dishes. The cabin slowly felt less like a shelter and more like a shared space. Eli never thanked her, but he ate every meal she made. One evening, while he chopped wood outside, her eyes drifted to a small leather book on a shelf. Her curiosity overcame her caution. She opened it and felt her blood turn cold. The pages were filled with names, each one crossed out, dates written beside them, sketches of streets and gun positions. It was not a diary, it was a record of killing. She returned the book to its place, just as Eli stepped inside. Their eyes met, and for the first time she saw something flicker across his face. Not anger, not fear, something wounded and deep. Neither spoke of it, but the air between them changed. That night, wolves howled close to the cabin. The sound cut through Clara's bones, raw and lonely. Fear surged through her, old and sharp. The cold, the darkness, the endless loss she had carried since James died crashed down on her all at once. Without thinking, she crossed the room and slipped into Eli's bedroll beside him. His body went rigid. He did not turn. He did not speak. The wolves howled again, closer now. Clara pressed her face into his shoulder, her voice breaking. "Don't stop," she whispered. "I need this." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Eli slowly set his pistol aside and pulled her close. His arm wrapped around her like a shield. He did not touch her again. He simply held her through the night while the storm screamed outside. In that silent cabin, something fragile and powerful took root. When morning came, no words were spoken, but the silence between them was no longer empty. Days passed. The storm trapped them together, and routine settled in. They worked side by side, repairing the cabin where the wind had broken through. They shared meals, glances, unspoken understanding. Clara saw kindness in Eli's actions, even if his words stayed few. One afternoon, Eli cut his hand while splitting wood. Blood spilled onto the snow. Clara rushed to him without hesitation. She cleaned and bound the wound, her fingers gentle against his rough skin. He flinched at first, then went still. When she looked up, his eyes held a raw vulnerability that took her breath away. Later, the tension broke. Clara confronted him about the journal, about the names, about who he really was. His anger flared, sharp and defensive, but beneath it, she saw fear. Fear of connection, fear of being known, She told him about James, about Silas Croft, about the men who murdered her husband, and the town that turned its back on her. Eli listened in silence, his face carved from stone. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and heavy. He told her the truth. He had once been a hired gun. He had left that life after a child died in a gunfight meant for someone else. He came to the mountains to disappear, to punish himself, to die slowly and alone. That night, the storm returned with fury. Wind tore the door from its hinges. The chimney collapsed, smothering the fire. Cold flooded the cabin. Eli smashed furniture to build a new flame. They huddled together beneath furs as the cold crept closer. Clara knew what she wanted, what she needed. "Hold me," she whispered. This time, Eli did not hesitate. He pulled her close, his grip desperate and human. In the flickering firelight, surrounded by destruction and fear, they came together. It was not gentle. It was not perfect. It was real. Two broken souls clinging to warmth in a world that had given them none. When spring finally came, it arrived quietly. Snow melted. Water ran. Birds returned. The world softened. Clara and Eli stepped outside together, blinking in the sunlight. They repaired the cabin, gathered food, and learned each other's rhythms. For a time, peace held. Then one afternoon, a trapper appeared, and with him came recognition, a name whispered with fear. Black Carver. The past Eli had buried was no longer content to stay hidden. The name hung in the air like a loaded gun. Black Carver. Clara felt the warmth of spring drain from her body as she watched Eli's face harden. The trapper's eyes flicked between them, fear and greed mixing in his stare. He left soon after, his mule moving faster than when he arrived. He carried the truth with him, and they both knew it. That night, Eli told her everything. Not half-truths. Not silence. All of it. The bounty, the lies pinned on him. The brother he had saved by taking the blame. He spoke without emotion, as if the story belonged to someone else. When he finished, he waited for her to step away. She did not. Instead, Clara took his hands. She told him he was not a ghost. She told him he was a man who had already paid enough. When she said she loved him, he turned away, not because he did not feel it, but because he believed love was something he was not allowed to keep. Before dawn, Clara made her choice. She left the cabin while Eli slept. She rode back toward Sage Hollow with one goal: justice. If she could expose Silas Croft, maybe she could clear Eli's name. Maybe she could save him the way he had saved her. Croft's men found her first. They blocked the trail, guns ready, smiles cruel. Clara fired James' revolver before fear could stop her. One man fell, wounded. Another grabbed her from behind. The blow to her head came fast and hard, and the world went dark. Eli woke with dread clawing at his chest. The cabin was empty. Daisy's tracks led away, then ended. He found the mare wandering alone. Something inside him broke open. The man who had tried to die in the mountains vanished. Black Carver returned. He tracked them with cold focus. He found the clearing. He saw Clara bound and bruised. He did not shout. He did not warn. The first shot dropped a man where he stood. The second ended another. The last one he spared, sending him back to Croft with a message. Clara was under his protection. Then Eli fell. The bullet had torn into his side. Blood soaked his shirt. Clara caught him before he hit the ground. She dragged him back to the cabin with a strength born of love and terror. For days she fought death with fire, water, and her bare hands. She refused to let him go. Eli survived. When he woke, she was there, exhausted, bruised, alive. He told her the words he had been too afraid to say. He loved her. He would always choose her. They rode into Sage Hollow together. This time, they did not hide. Clara walked into the sheriff's office and named Silas Croft as her husband's murderer. Eli surrendered his guns and offered testimony. He told the truth about everything. The town trembled. Croft sent men to silence them. The town stood up instead. Farmers, shopkeepers, men and women tired of fear. When Croft's gunmen rode in at dusk, they met resistance. A hard, desperate fight tore through the street. Eli took a bullet meant for Clara. She held him as he bled, her voice breaking as she begged him to stay. He did, by inches, by luck, by her refusal to let him die. Croft fled the county that night, his power shattered, his crimes exposed. James Rollins was finally given justice. Months later, Clara and Eli returned to the mountains, not to hide, but to live. They rebuilt the cabin stronger than before. They filled it with light, warmth, and quiet laughter. Clara opened a small school in Sage Hollow. Eli trained horses. The guns disappeared from the walls. On a winter evening, years later, snow fell softly outside their candlelit cabin. Clara leaned back against Eli's chest as the fire crackled. The world was quiet, safe. They had survived. Together,